Okay, so I'm going to get into reading a nutritional label or nutrition label. But just a heads up, I'm not like reading directly from the book or anything. I'm reading from my blog, which is like the first parts are actually kind of like a summary of the book, but I'm just using that as notes. So don't think that I'm just like sitting here like reading a book to you or whatever. Um, but nutrition labels, there's the serving size, which is the amount of food that makes up one portion, and then there's servings per container, which is just that how many servings or portions are in the box or bag or whatever it is. Calories are kind of tricky, um, and they're actually really not too important in a certain sense. A calorie, in a scientific term, is actually a unit of energy. A dietary calorie is a kilocalorie, meaning 1,000 calories. But for any like fitness discussion, you'll only hear the term calorie. Kilocalorie is like a scientific thing, so no real reason to know that. Just a little tidbit. And then also kind of unimportant is calories from fat. What's really helpful is a calorie profile, and what that is, it's kind of the ratio of protein to carbs and the ratio of protein to fat and carbohydrates. So there's three macronutrients, and I just said them. There's fat, there's carbohydrates, and there's protein. So fat is not well. There's two differences. There's two terms fat. There's body fat, which is like if you get fat, you have a lot of body fat, and there's dietary fat, and they're very different. In fact, if you don't get enough dietary fat or the right kind, then you will gain body fat. Um, so saturated fat is what people usually call like heart attack fat. And really, though, it's essential to your bone health, your immune system, and it actually lowers blood cholesterol when it's in safe amounts. The problem is that many Americans receive about 90% of their fats from saturated fat, and really, you only want like one third of your fat intake to be saturated fat. The other two thirds should be from poly and mono unsaturated fats, about a third each for those. And then trans fat is a byproduct of partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. And lucky for us in the United States, it's actually illegal because it's directly related to coronary disease, Alzheimer's, liver dysfunction, infertility, a whole bunch of bad stuff. And I think it shows up naturally in some types of meats, but I think it's in really small doses. A carbohydrate, the second of the macronutrients, is a sugar compound that plants make during photosynthesis. Pretty much a sugar, grain, pasta, or rice. And a quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger here: carbs are burned in the oven of fats. So dietary fiber is good for indigestion. I'm going to get to the protein, the third macronutrient, at the end. Um, so dietary fiber is basically, if you want to look at carbs in a negative light, um, dietary fiber. So if you're thinking of carbs in a negative light, um, you would think of that as like their carb effect. So if you take the carbs in a food and subtract the dietary fiber, that's going to give you about how much the carbs affect you, because the dietary fiber is directly related to the carbs but is good for you. So if it's close to the same amount, then it's ideal. Um, so not super important now, but just something to keep in mind. And then sugars are in essence the glycemic level of a food, and they alter your insulin levels pretty significantly. Um, most of the carbs in a food are derived from sugar, so it should be part of your peak meal, which I'll get into in a little bit. And lastly, but not leastly, is protein. Every meal should have a high protein content. A full meal should consist of more protein than fats and carbs combined. And the benefits of a high protein diet are pretty endless. The exact amount of protein you should be taking in every day is kind of a hotbed for discussion, but again, something I'll get into soon. So I'm coming up on 5 minutes. Um, you know what? I'm going to start on this anyway. This is base meals and peak meals.